So, finally the first Dark Souls 3 Ashes of Ariandel DLC, that's going to be released in October, was published today. And it's rather interesting and intriguing. So, even though I don't really like it, as I prefer to have the complete picture first, before making any assumptions or conclusions, I guess it would still be interesting to discuss what we've seen in the trailer and generally be excited about what might be waiting for us in the DLC. Well, the first thing is that I'm happy to see that the DLC won't be just a PvP map as it was assumed in some sources yesterday. There's gonna be some lore, and really important one which, as far as I can assume for now, will probably make the stuff we've been uncertain about in our older discussions clearer. So, let's have a look at what do we have in the trailer. The first thing I'd like to discuss are these two scenes, some woman in white robes and bearded man in front of the altar. Naturally the first thing we notice is that snowy area, but I'd like to discuss it a little later. What is so interesting about this scene is that it takes place in the cleansing chapel of the Cathedral of the Deep. So, possibly this praying guy is going to appear there after the update, and or meeting some additional conditions. Another interesting thing is that the altar is in fact covering a face-palming statue, rather common for the Cathedral of the Deep. Basically these are the same statues that are covered with red cloth. They even put an actual model of the statue beneath the cloth, even though it's covered and we don't normally see it. And it's just a dumb speculation and a random guess, but the clothes seem to be similar enough to assume that there's a possibility that the statues depict that woman in white. As for the reason the statues are covered in cloth, even though it was supposed to be discussed in video about the deep, I guess it isn't that after Aldich's visions of deep sea they banned the statues as something forbidden. They could remove them, destroy them, but they only covered them, and some of them were left not covered. But there's a possibility that red cloth is a symbol of Aldrich, or something like that, as his throne is covered with similar cloth. And when they cover the statues, and hang the red cloth all over the cathedral, it's in fact a symbol of something, maybe intention to devour the person who's depicted, though it could be that it's the other way around, and cloth is just a part of cathedral stuff and Aldrich's throne is covered with it because of this. But let's return to the discussion of the DLC trailer. Basically, the very first thing we see there is the scene where Knight makes his way through the snowstorm. We also see some tree with little flames on it. And a little later we see this scene with a rope bridge in the same snowy setting, leading to something that looks like chapel. And basically the snowy location and rope bridge naturally remind us of the painted world of Ariandel of Dark Souls 1. Also the name Ariandel sounds rather similar to Ariandel, and we'll discuss their etymology, as it's just one of the things I love about the Dark Souls, but a little later in the video. Aside of the similarity of bridge, landscape and snow, there's also this line spoken in the trailer.
If you are like us, another forlorn soul, with no place to call your own.
Which, under some speculation of course, pretty fits the inhabitants of Ariandel, the world of the things forbidden in normal world, creatures that do not belong to normal world, that weren't supposed to appear like Priscilla, for instance. But yes, that is far-fetched. However, if we recall some old thoughts about the DLC, that we discussed in one of the recent videos.
Whatever thou beest, thou'rt wondrous strange, yet strangely familiar, visitor.
About things in Dark Souls 3 that might be hinting that we are going to visit Yoshika's past, which, as we discussed, pretty much could be the Ariandel itself, being an enormous double speculation with lots of ifs. The two alleged pieces of puzzle would fit one another.
Then show my lady flame.
And another enormous speculation is about the words in the trailer mentioning some lady who knows, maybe it could be Priscilla. But yes, that's another random guess and attempt to tie Ariandel to the trailer. Also there were some scenes that possibly are a little reminiscent of Ariandel's dungeon. Or this new fire-breathing stuff which reminds a little of those annoying engorged hollows with torches who exhaled poison gas and fire. Or this scene, which we'll discuss in more detail a little later, looks like that's some wax thing, but it also could be some painting of sorts, and in Dark Souls 1 we entered Ariandel through the painting, though this one is a really weak point, as it doesn't look much like a painting really. But let's not be focused only on this assumption about Ariandel and Yorshka's past, and say that geographically, the snowy location could be located somewhere in the Boreal Valley, maybe in woods near Ariandel. And before proceeding to the next subject, let's discuss the possible meaning of name Ariandel, and also Ariandel, as it seems to be derived from the same root. So, first, even though we're told about some ashes, we don't really quite know whether Ariandel is a character, like person, or maybe a name of the land, or location, that was lost. And since more info would really help, let's note it that these etymology assumptions are really preliminary, just the first thoughts that come to mind. So, Ariandel seems to be formed from a root Aria, Arian and Del, and there are several options regarding each part. As for Aryan, I guess the first thought that comes to mind is that it could be possibly derived from Sanskrit Aryan meaning noble, royal. What's interesting is that J.R.R. Tolkien's Elvish Elementar with the same meaning seems to be derived from real-life Aryan as well. And while it's pretty simple with Sanskrit Aryan, there are also other options for root Aryan and Ariandel. It could be taken from Old English word Aryan meaning to spare, show mercy. Or alternatively, and it's a really interesting option, it could be taken from Welsh word Orion meaning silver, which would fit one of the possible meanings of the second part Del, as there is also a Welsh word Del meaning pretty, as it was pointed out in Reddit user Misaga discussion, so one meaning of Ariandel could be the Welsh pretty, beautiful silver or something along these lines, which would basically fit some person, likely woman, and we see some white-haired girl, and woman in white, who theoretically could be named Pretty Silver for their appearance. Though, I'd call it a little far-fetched, as it's about ashes of Ariandel while women in the video seem to be more or less okay. As for Aryan, there also could be an assumption that it is related to historical and theological term of Arianism, but I'd say that Ariandel's hardly referring to Christianity. As for other meanings of element Del, it could be derived from Breton Del for foliage, leaves, or possibly Proto-Germanic Dela meaning part, portion. Or, more interestingly, it could be taken from Old English Del, derived from Proto-Germanic Dallo, hollow, abyss. While De Ilo has a really interesting and obviously intriguing meaning, Del, which was derived from it, can also mean valley. So, meaning of Ariandel can also be something like Silver Valley, which would fit it if Ariandel was a name of some location. But probably the most interesting possible meaning can be seen if we also discuss the elements of certain fictional languages. Namely, J.R.R. Tolkien's Elvish, as it has already been used by FromSoft to name an Orlando, which in fact means Sunlundo, and Irithil, from Ursul meaning moon. So, the root Aria can be compared to Tolkien Elvish root Ario meaning sun. Then Ariandel could be actually derived from a name somewhat similar to Arwen, with a noble, royal and Wen, maiden, Aran plus Del, also valley, like in real life Del we discussed before, which was basically taken into such names as Rivendell, which could mean Valley of Sun Maiden. Basically this assumption is supported by the stuff found in the already mentioned Reddit discussion, as it was found that there's a character named Arian or just Arian, which literally meant Maiden of Sunlight, a sun-related spirit in Tolkien's world. Basically, I found that she was chosen to carry the vessel for the sun, which is surely interesting if we make parallels with Dark Souls lore. But we'll discuss this a little later. So name Ariandel could be derived from word for Maiden of Sunlight and Del, Valley. However, Del is also a separate word in Tolkien's Elvish which might mean fear, horror, loathing. So, Ariandel could actually be horror of the Maiden of Sun, which makes it mind-blowingly interesting, though it's only one of possible options. And if we consider also the Tolkien's Elvish, Arianes might have an interesting meaning, with Aria for sun, sunlight and Mis, word for less, so it can actually mean sunless, which pretty much fits the area, as it both dark, and the area of things forbidden in the sunlit world of Gwyn, and the most mind-blowing in this, is that the sunless realms, where they worship nameless moon, who's likely Gwynevere as we discussed, might in fact be Arianes, as its name can possibly mean sunless, and we can also recall all the relation between Gwynevere and Yorshka, and also between Yorshka and the Painted World. Well, It's surely mind-blowing, but I'd suggest not to get too excited about it, as it's only one of possible explanations and basically still just a speculation, for now. And excuse me, I got carried away by the interesting stuff, again. Let's now return to the main topic, the DLC trailer. So, among the footage of new characters and locations, as well as new weapons and magic, we also see some familiar characters who have enormous importance in Dark Souls 3 story. We see Oseros, Lothric brothers, Gwynevere devoured by Aldrich and the Nameless King. And, basically all of these characters are all related among themselves, and more excitingly, might be related to the new character we saw in the trailer. So to keep the video short, yet it's already too long, let's get to this topic. I guess, the most important thing we see in the trailer is the Lord Vessel, and the real one. In basic game we've seen a lot of stone Lord Vessels, below the bonfire, at the cemetery and on some altar at the high wall of Lothric we get water from the shrine. So, obviously it was a very important, possibly religiously, in Lothric. And in the DLC trailer we see the real Lord Vessel held by this black creature. It even uses it as a weapon in a boss fight. It looks like this creature is female, it's wearing something like a dress. And well, if we recall Dark Souls 1, it was Gwynevere who had the Lord Vessel and gave it to us. So for now it's an enormous speculation, but it can actually be that it is Gwynevere, or someone related to her, that turned into the black hollowed looking creature, which will probably be a boss in the Ashes of Ariandel DLC. And again, it's another speculation, but it's really likely that Gwynevere is actually Queen of Lothric. What is definite though, is that Gwynevere is related to Queen of Lothric or some way, as we've discussed it many times already. It can be either her, or someone related to her, which explains the religious importance of the Lord Vessel for Lothric Kingdom. And we know that Queen of Lothric disappeared after giving birth to Ocelot, likely in some unnatural way, in attempts to create the perfect heir to the throne, and Gwyn's sunlight and duty of rekindling the first flame, as we discussed in the older videos. So, it can actually be speculated that all of these experiments with perfect heir in fact turned our beloved Gwynevere into this. For example, we know of the experiments on Gertrude, as discussed in all lore about Rosaria video, and all the feathers at the Lothric Prince boss fight room, and the black creature has feathers and bird claws. I mean, after what they did to Gwynevere, nothing would be impossible. Also we saw the Nameless King who also appears rather hollowed. And, basically, all of the main game's characters in the trailer we've mentioned, are connected to one another via Gwynevere, as Gwynevere and the Nameless King are Gwynevere's brothers, while Oseros seems to be husband of Lothric's queen who is either Gwynevere, or someone related to her, and Lothric princes, are, obviously sons of Lothric queen. So, you see, it seems that these characters being mentioned in the trailer altogether isn't just a coincidence. Though, it's only a speculation. Another point that probably can be speculated to be hinting that the black creature with Lord Vessel is Gwynevere. Is this concept art of the Queen with a story very similar to that of Lothric's Queen, published by Passion Republic? Watch the Dark Souls 3 DLC concept arts video on my channel for more details. Though, it's not the very same design obviously, but they seem to be rather similar. And let's recall possible meaning of Ariandel related to the Maiden of Sunlight and Tolkien's Arian, who bore the Vessel of Sun. Again, some really exciting stuff. But let's not forget that these are only some speculations for now. Basically, there isn't in fact much stuff to really back them up. For instance, the black creature with crow feathers and claws is most similar to Corvian's if anything. And this similarity is actually another point that might be hinting that the new DLC will be about Arianis, as Corvians are related to the Painted World, as we see by scythes and overall crow-like appearance. And, naturally, the crow-like appearance of the big female creature makes us ask ourselves, could this be Velka, the black-haired witch, goddess of sin, associated with crows and related to Sable Church of Lundor? Aside of that, it seems that we see Cornix in the trailer, and he's also associated with crows and feathers. But really lots of things can be speculated at this point. Let's discuss what we actually see. And what we see is the black feathered creature whipping itself sitting over the Lord Vessel. which can possibly mean that it feels some guilt and desire to punish itself, which could fit both Lothric's queen with experiments on children or Corvians with their fears, or any other character with any other reasons. However, it can also possible that creature wants to fill the Lord Vessel with its blood or something like that. As in the trailer we also see blood drawn to the Lord Vessel, which might mean that this time the vessel is filled with blood, like that ritual of Lothric knights with cutting neck, or it might actually mean something else. I guess we don't have enough info about that yet. But let's proceed to another subject. This scene looks rather interesting. Though I don't really see clearly what is it there on the left. It looks like it's some wax stuff with something that might be Lothric royal banner, that red cloth with pattern. Along with the stained glass on the background, it makes it look like it's taking place in Grand Archives or some other area in Lothric Palace, though I'm not as sure about this one, as I am about the cleansing chapel we discussed earlier. And returning to that bearded man who gives us some stuff, I guess it's possible that he'll appear at Cleansing Chapel or elsewhere, possibly under some conditions, and gives us some key object that will allow us to go proceed to the new areas, maybe even via that altar. But, I don't know really. This video is just about the very first thoughts about the very intriguing stuff in the video, which were rather interesting though. But I don't really like to make some assumptions without actually researching the matter properly. So please, don't really take this video as a lore video similar to my other videos, it's nowhere near them, just some first thoughts and what might actually be. And I can't really state that I actually think that it's gonna be one way or another in the DLC because it's only about possibilities for now. It's just the very first baseless thoughts that I found interesting, and the purpose of this video is not to share some cool stuff I found, as it was with previous videos, but to simply discuss the trailer and maybe my thoughts will indirectly help you to find something even more interesting on your own, and who knows, maybe it will be really a revelation. Unlike this baseless wild speculations video. And basically there are lots of other interesting stuff in the trailer like these wolves. Who knows, maybe they're the same creatures as Sith. Or this enemy who gives impression of some legendary northern warrior, or something like that. I also liked these fly insect enemies, they look really cool. Are they insects of the deep sea? As for the impressions from trailer in general, I think it's great, and it surely is very intriguing. Also, I am somewhat pleased to see that so far we haven't seen the enemies similar to those on alleged leaks DLC concepts, aside for that queen, which is a little similar, but only a little, and it's not the exact same concept for sure, in the game. As in my video 1 week ago, I suppose that possibly those arts aren't related to the DLC, because they look more like things unused for the main game or alternative versions of things in game. Though, of course it's not definite yet. They might really turn out to be concept of new stuff in the game. We'll know it for sure only when the last DLC is released. But at least, we haven't seen those concepts in game yet, so I'm not ashamed for that video yet. However, with this amount of pretty baseless speculations about the DLC, it's likely I'll feel ashamed when the DLC finally arrives. Anyway, please remember that it wasn't an actual lore video. Just teasing with some stuff that might possibly be revealed by the DLC, so we'd be even more excited waiting for it. And what do you think about the trailer and DLC? Did my video help you to come up with some ideas I missed? And please, watch the other normal lore videos on my channel, because I'm really ashamed to come up with such uncertain stuff, while there really are some more definite and very exciting things that I've found. It's not like I just go with all these baseless stuff in every video.